Right. Welcome, everyone. Let me actually turn off my lo-fi beats for a second here. Thank you for everybody who's joined so far. We'll go ahead and get started, but this will be recorded. Welcome back to anybody who was at the previous session 2 weeks ago, and welcome to anybody who's joining us for the first time. Today's session is going to focus on your actual job search. So we're going to talk about some career search tips throughout your job search. So with that said, basic housekeeping stuff. Please keep your microphone on mute. I will ask for questions towards the end and everything, but just during the presentation portion, just to minimize sound and whatnot. Feel free to put your camera on if you feel comfortable. No worries if you don't. And then again, I'll have Q&A, but if you have questions as we go along, feel free to drop them in the chat and I will answer them as soon as I can. So with that said, our lineup for this evening, we're going to start with tips for staying well while you job search, specifically targeted towards people with mood disorders. Defining your objective statement, which will really be the root of your resume, cover letter, and interview later on. So I'll talk about that. We'll do an activity together. Some basic resume and cover letter tips, but as I was telling Adi before we started, that is going to be the next workshop too. As I was making this, I was like, this could be its own workshop in and of itself. So just know that's just a flavor, and there'll be more on that later. A little bit about informational interviews, which is basically, a fancy word for asking somebody advice on different career paths and how they like their job. But we'll get into that too. And then next steps and resources. So that's kind of your outline. I'll have resources for you to take home. I'll send these slides out, all that good stuff. So with that said, I'm Caroline. I'm a career advisor, and I also live with cyclothymia and OCD. My perspective for all of the advice that I'm giving previously and with this presentation and in the future comes from working in multiple industries myself. I do work in career services in higher education, so there is some of that in there, and simply lived experience with having a mood disorder. With that said, I want to start it off knowing that we're all people with mood disorders, or close to people with mood disorders, that balance is crucial in general, but especially when you're searching for a job. It's often a full-time job in and of itself, and that is something that you should take with as much work-life balance, search-life balance, as you would a job. So don't let it burn you out. And I'll give you a few tips that have worked for me in terms of searching to make sure that I'm not burning myself out. So one thing that is very useful is to set a consistent cadence. Again, just like having work-life balance, you should have search-life balance too. And that'll help you stay well and ensure you're not focusing too much on one thing or another, which I don't know about you, but for me tends to cause emotional instability and stress. So with that said, I have a few tips based on sort of my own my own trials and errors here. Tips for staying mentally healthy during job searching. The first one is to keep a consistent schedule. So since job searching can very often be a full-time job, thinking of it in terms of scheduling it just the way that you would a normal 9 to 5, or whatever schedule you want to go with, if you don't want to do the 9 to 5 Monday through Friday thing, keep a schedule as if that you were working full time. So don't do things outside of 5 p.m. or whatever your end time is. Don't only work within that section of time. And then have the rest of the time to do other things. I actually, in the resources, have included a 1-page hour by hour weekly calendar. And that could be useful to, pencil in, I'm going to look for jobs at this time. I'm going to take a break and, do exercise. Then I'm going to eat lunch. Then I'm going to go back and do more job related things. So keeping a schedule like that is really helpful in making sure you don't overdo it, because you'll be able to see, oh, I've been spending 5 hours on this. It's time for me to take my lunch break and whatnot. So keeping a consistent schedule is really good. Don't push yourself too hard. People with mood disorders might need to adjust their speed depending on the symptoms and your personal needs. And I'll talk about some specifics on both sides of that coin in a couple of slides from now. And again, search life balance. Only search during your business hours. When you're off the clock for whatever cadence you want to do, you're done searching for the day. You're going to focus on leisure and self-care, so that you're having a balanced search life balance. And be kind to yourself. Job searching is really hard. It's very stressful. And make sure you're not neglecting your wellness activities, and reward yourself for those small victories along the way. I know in the past when I had been looking for a job, I felt like all I could focus my energy on was getting another job. And that, might have worked in the sense that maybe I got another job, but then I was so burned out from the search that it was like I had to take more rest time after I was already starting a new job. So that's important to understand. You're a whole person, not just a job seeker or somebody who's working at a job eventually. So make sure that you're being kind to yourself too, or in this whole process. This is one thing that's worked for me, and it's the Pomodoro method. But I use it in a little bit of a different way that it's sometimes sold. So if you've heard of the Pomodoro method, you might be a little bit familiar with it, but I'll walk you through what it is. This personally works really well for keeping me balanced, so I figured I'd share this information to see if maybe it will help you. Um, so the Pomodoro method was developed by Francesco Cirillo in the 1980s, and he named it after, if you go back here, this tomato timer. It was his kitchen timer, and he used it for these intervals. So basically, the way it works is there's a 2 hour block total with 4 intervals, and you set a timer for all of them. For the main blocks of time, you'll have four 25-minute blocks of focused time for a particular activity. Then you take a 5-minute break, and then you go into the next one. And you do that cycle 4 times. And then after that, you take a 30-minute break. And then you can either stop your activities for the day, or you can do another one later. So while this was often used for people to make sure that they were focusing on things if they were getting distracted, you can also use it to your advantage in very particular ways with a mood disorder. I've used it in both of these ways, and I found they work pretty well for me. So, take, your mileage may vary, but I have found this to be helpful. So if you're having trouble getting motivated, which is very common with job searches, it's so overwhelming that, sometimes you don't even want to start. Focus on job search related activities for just one Pomodoro interval, and then spend the rest of the time on other things. So you're just focusing for 25 minutes on job stuff. Then take a break, and then do the other things for the other 3. So maybe you get up and, take a shower, get ready and everything for one of them. Then you take a break. Then maybe you're exhausted, your energy levels can be up and down with depression. So maybe that's a time to take a break, watch TV. And then take another 5-minute break, and then do something else. Maybe if you're feeling up to doing more job stuff, great. But if you want to do something else, that's fine too. But at least focus on the job search for one of them. You can get a lot of things done in 25 minutes. And that kind of progress, as long as it's consistent, will help you get to where you want to go in terms of finding your next position, or at least figuring out what you want to do next. So that's one strategy for that. For my people who get hypomanic, this is me. If you tend to get too focused, You can also use the Pomodoro method to keep yourself from getting too focused on something. Because left to my own devices, I would be on the computer all day for 8 hours and take a 5 minute break and then do another 4 hours searching for a job or doing whatever thing I wanted to do. So having some guardrails in is useful. So in this case, you can dedicate an interval or two to job search activities, but you have to do something in between. So, job search for 25 minutes, take a 5 minute break. Go outside, go for a walk, 5 minute break. Back to job search. So, you're kind of alternating it so you're not doing too much in one big block. That I found has broken it up enough for me to not get hyper focused on things. That's one particular strategy that happens to work for me. Again, your mileage may vary, but this format that was built for one thing can be built for other things and customized for the people that use them. So the other thing I'll say is have patience and know you're not alone in searching for jobs. It is not easy. It is frustrating and usually a more complicated process than you initially think. But just know it's important to take care of yourself in all these areas of wellness as you go on this career journey, and that there's other people out there who want to help you. And I'll get into that a little bit more with the informational interview part. The next part that I think will guide the rest of your search is developing your objective statement. Developing a strong objective statement will guide your entire application. So this will come in when you're doing your resume, when you're doing your cover letter, and later when you're doing your interviews with people. So with that said, um, the important thing to consider when you're formulating this objective statement is why this job and why now. So you will have to tweak your objective statement for whichever job you're applying for. But you can create kind of a template to sort of understand your story and explain that to someone if they ask, well, why are you applying for this one? Why are you interviewing here or whatnot? So being able to communicate your story and how that led you to applying to a specific job at the specific time you are applying to it can help guide your application. When recruiters are looking at applications, that is the main question they're asking. Why is this person applying to this particular job at this particular company right now? So knowing that and having that kind of in your back pocket can guide the rest of your job search and building your application materials. So this is a bit unconventional, but it's something that kind of helps you to tell your story. So at Pixar, the animation studio, they have a particular model for pitching stories called the story spine. And this was designed for structuring a pitch when they would go into pitch a new movie or something like that, or develop stories. But it works really well for developing your objective statement too. So with that said, there's a particular format for it. So you can use this as kind of stems to think of your story. So it starts with once upon a time, blah blah blah. Every day they do whatever, but one day something happened. Then you string in because of that, for each detail after that. And ever since the whatever you put there, and then until finally, and that leads you to the final part of your little statement here. So all of this said, I did an example for myself so that you can kind of see how it works. So for me, my objective statement would be, once upon a time, I studied film to be a writer. Every day I would learn and reflect on what I wanted in a career. Until one day, I realized I didn't like working on set and I went to my professor crying. Because of that, my professor calmly worked with me to figure out what was right for me. Because of that, I realized that I wanted to do what she was doing to help me and became interested in career advising. And ever since, I have been helping people define and achieve their career goals. Until finally, I was diagnosed with cyclothymia and found DBSA and was able to use my skills to help other people with mood disorders like me to achieve their career goals. So you can kind of use that structure to plot out like this is my story. Um, and then you can use that when you're applying to jobs to sort of be like, this is who I am. This is how I got to the exact point of applying to your job right now. So again, it's normally used for a different purpose, but I found it really useful in terms of narrowing down my story when I am applying for positions or advising people who are applying for positions. So this can take a little while to fully do, but I'll give you a couple minutes now to sort of try it out. So take a few minutes. I will put the different points up again, just so you can kind of see them. It's okay if you only get through one or two. It does take time. But in reflecting on your life so far, how can you apply this to your job search? So I'll give you a couple minutes. I'll put on the lo-fi beats again, and then I'll put up those. Here is the spine elements again. Take about 3 or 4 minutes to just try it out a little bit. Oops, sorry. Give it about 1 more minute just because I want to leave time for questions at the end. But this takes time. Just get a feel for it. Don't worry about rushing through it or anything like that. Lo-fi for a little bit. It'll come back later. So how did that feel? Looking at it a little bit more that way. Looking at it as your story rather than writing a statement of this is my job application. Felt good? That's good. Yeah, you get to own your story. So, it's a matter of telling them, I'm here now, and this is why I'm interested in you. So this will be in the resources too. So you can take time to sort of flesh it all out. It's all listed there. It's in a nice format you can fill it out more easily. But this is oh my goodness, I am way too far in my slides. Um, get a sneak preview of everything. Okay, so that'll be in your packet, and it'll make it a little bit easier for you to fill that out. So again, you're telling your story as you're applying. The more clearly you communicate why you are interested in working for an organization and why right now will help them to understand your unique value to the workplace. So some general tips for resumes. Again, as I was writing this, I quickly realized this could easily be its own presentation in and of itself, which it will be. That'll definitely be the topic of the next one. But just some quick tips. Um, Take that objective statement that you just wrote, um, and use it to build a 1 to 3 sentence objective statement at the top of your resume. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like too. This will guide the rest of your application and give give the person who's reading your resume a really clear sense of, okay, it seems like they're interested in this, they want to do this thing. That makes sense why they applied to this particular job. Focus on your skills. So if you went to the previous session, we talked about sort of teasing out the skills that you have just from working or your favorite activities and everything. Everybody has unique skills that they can bring to the table. So create a section that has some of those skills listed out. Based on the job description and what they are interested in. A lot of it will be guided by the individual job listing. So look at what skills they list and then figure out a way that you can bring that in by communicating your unique skills. Select relevant experience. So sometimes when you create a resume, people feel pressured to put every single thing they've ever done on there. You do not need to do that. Most of the time, 1 page is kind of the standard for resumes. So feel free to handpick ones that are relevant. So a relevant experience section can be useful. It can be helpful to also highlight experience that is very related to the job you're applying for, but maybe isn't chronological. So, for example, if I wanted to apply to, or if somebody wanted to apply to a job that was in retail, but in the past they had a totally different career. They could, if they worked in retail in the past, put that first and say retail experience. And then under that, they could list other experience and then put whatever else they were doing within that period of time. So it doesn't look like a gap. It just looks like you're focusing on this particular skill or particular experience that's very relevant. So creating relevant experience sort of tiers can be helpful. Use their words back at them. So they'll have the job listing and you can use keywords and phrasing that are in the job listing to put in your resume and your cover letter. And that will help with the applicant tracking system, which is basically the automated system they have to scan resumes. So the more keywords you put in there that are like the job description, the more likely that that system will pick it up and push the resume through. It's a very frustrating reality that a lot of times a machine is looking at resumes before a human does. But using those keywords can help you, make sure you're getting past the computer. Few other tips here. Keep it simple. A simple black and white resume is more likely to pass through those filters and appeal to people reading them because they're easier to read. As beautiful as some of those templates are, sometimes they do want to print them out. And if you have a beautifully colored resume and everything, it's just going to look black and white anyway. So keeping it simple with black and white, simple text and all that, that's usually the best way to go. Memberships and volunteering completely count. So consider creating a section for any professional memberships, groups or organizations you are involved with, and DBSA absolutely counts. Especially our facilitators, they have wonderful communication skills, organizational skills, a lot of people skills. So that's absolutely something that you can put on your resume. If you're involved as a member, and you're just getting to know people, there are so many soft skills or transferable skills that come from that. So just remember that even showing up today and being part of DBSA, that is something that you can put on your resume, that is valuable. Graduation years are optional. So in recent years, job applicants have started removing their graduation years from their education section, to avoid age discrimination. So I just want to make you aware that that's an option for
Mm.
you. You can absolutely do that if you want to. And keep it short. Usually a one-page resume is sufficient. But if you have a specific extensive experience or you're going for a particular industry, you can go on to another page. For example, I work in higher ed, and they have CVs that are very long for, people who are in academia. So that's more of a standard within that industry. You can go a little bit in more depth. But for most industries, one page is kind of the standard. The cover letter. So this is used as a tool to express yourself and your interest a little bit more in depth than your resume would get. Your resume just shows your experience. The cover letter tells the reviewer who you are and why you're interested in working with them now. And it's a way of storytelling too, which kind of brings you back to the Pixar story spine. So the more that you know that story, the more that you can sort of tell that through your application. Before I go on to the informational interviews, I wanted to show you a couple samples here. So let me zoom in here. This is like a template resume that I made up the other day. So um using Canva, they have a lot of free formats. I won't even go into too much of like this is the format you should use because many of them are great. So checking out Canva and seeing what's on there, as long as it's easy to read, and I do recommend black and white just because again, that's a little bit easier for people to read and to print out and everything, you're fine. So this format, to show you the objective statement. So this person wants to be a business analyst or a project manager. So they, talked about their experience. I believe it's two long sentences. So they're just saying, I'm a business school graduate. I want to work on this. Here's the skills I bring to the table. The story spine will help you kind of narrow that down. But that just very clearly says this is why I'm applying to this job right now. The key competencies, that can also just be skills. So this is a good place to list off some skills that they mention in the job application, um, or ones that you really want to highlight that are related. So this case, they have specific experience related to what they're looking for. So business analyst and project management. So they put that there, and just kind of highlighted it in the dates. But there's also a section for other professional experience because they have experience as a barista. So you can include that information, and you can kind of like separate it out if you're feeling like you want to highlight a particular experience, but it might not be chronological. That's one way to sort of handle that. Education, didn't put the dates, so that's fine. The main thing is where did you go to school? What did you major in? And then extracurricular activities, or you can put memberships and certifications or whatnot, however you want to describe it. This puts a little bit more information about the certifications that this person has had, what they do for volunteer work, and look, they're a facilitator with DBSA. So that's definitely something you can put on your resume too. So that's kind of a template for that. What I did next was, let me see here. I took literally the same template to make it like a nice matching cover letter. So you just remember you can take this here and make it a separate page and sort of make it sort of like a branded packet. They even have some on Canva where it's like here's 3 pages and then you just kind of customize them as you want. So it is a nice touch to sort of have it matching. But here I just kind of created a template here. Dear hiring manager, or if you know the person's name, that's great too. I heard about the position at place you found out about the job, or this is a good place to mention somebody who might have told you about the job. I'm interested in being considered. Here's where you really kind of tell your story. 3 to 5 sentences talking about why you're interested in this specific organization and why you want to be considered for this specific job. This again is where the Pixar story spine objective statement helps because you want to tell your story up until the moment you hit apply at this point. I believe that I have several skills that would be valuable in the job you're applying to, including then put like 3 to 5 bullet points on skills you've developed or experiences, should be phrased differently than it is on your resume, and write in complete sentences. Then you just sum up with, I have included the application materials they requested. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Thanks for your time. Hope to hear you soon. Hope to hear from you soon. It's a nice touch if you have your signature you can put in there. You can do that on I have a Mac, so you can do that on the preview button. You can add your annotation there, and then put your name at the bottom. And this is a template that you can use. It'll be in your packet to look at after the presentation today. But telling that story is going to be the thing that it keeps coming back to. Once you kind of understand that, then the rest is a matter of filling out a form. With that said, it can also be helpful to talk to other people who have, done the job that you're interested in. The best way to sort of find out if a job is right for you is to ask somebody who has the job if they like their job, and see, what they do on a day-to-day basis, and see if that's something that interests you. So that said, informational interview, I found with students in particular, they find the term scary. It is just a fancy way of talking to somebody about their job and asking if they like it and what they do. So it's just quick conversation, can help you kind of see if you like a career path based on what people are saying about it. And it's also got a secondary benefit of building your network in a focused way. So if you find you are interested in doing that kind of work, you've met somebody who's doing that kind of work. So that builds your connections in that way too. So with that said, where do you find people? The easiest way to find people is on LinkedIn. So if you know a particular job you're interested in, type in the name of that job and people will come up. So you can also search by company that they're working at and look at, what they're doing there and sort of understand, oh, that might be a job I might be interested in. Maybe I want to talk to this person. So LinkedIn is a great way to reach a lot of people. If you've graduated from a school, the Alumni Association is usually a good way to meet people. I work for a very large university. We have entire departments who do this. So they have events where you can meet alumni. There's also online resources that connect people together. So you can use that school connection to connect with people who are doing jobs that are of interest to you. Former colleagues at previous jobs who might have gone on to do other things, your friends, professional organizations for the desired industry. I do have a link for that at the end, a really good resource for that. Your family and people in your local community, and DBSA counts. So, getting to know the people around you and sort of listening to them and understanding what's going on with their or how they like their job and asking them questions about themselves, it can give you a lot of information for yourself. Um, so just a couple of tips on asking for an informational interview. First, research the person and be specific about why you want to talk to them. People can usually tell if you're kind of doing a cut and paste. So just looking at, oh, I saw you worked at wherever. I am interested in that place. I'm really curious about your perspective, like working in this department or something like that. Rather than, you seem cool. Can we talk? That does work, but not as effectively. Um, Frame the request as looking for advice. people like to feel like they're experts on things. So, uh, reaching out to them and saying like, oh, you know what? I found out like I'm interested in marketing. I see you're a marketing director at this place. I'd love to get your advice as somebody who's interested in going into that thing, seeing that you have that experience. Framing it that way makes it much more likely that the person will respond to you. I've seen this even just from my own applications. um, so framing it as a request no more than 15 minutes. Sometimes a half hour, especially if the person's busy, that can be a little bit harder to schedule. But 15 minutes is usually not too bad, and you can get through your questions in that amount of time. So asking for that shorter period of time, I'm sure there's some psychological explanation for it, but people are more likely to say, oh, sure, I've got 15 minutes versus a half hour. Um, Come prepared with a few questions. I have a list for that at the in the packet that'll go out. Don't ask for a job. I find this with students sometimes. They'll reach out to the person and they'll be like, I want to talk to you. And then they'll say, I'm looking for a job. And that will have made the whole part of them being interested in talking to them and everything. It feels phony at that point. If it's like, oh, well, you just wanted to talk to me because you wanted me to tell you about a job. So that is something that I do bring up, just framing it as you are literally just talking to them to get to know them. That feels more genuine to somebody who has been approached for that kind of thing. At the end of the meeting, one great thing to sort of build your circle is to ask them if they have any suggestions for more people who might be able to give good advice too. So, for example, if you were talking to somebody and they were working in publishing, and you found through the discussion like you really want to be a proofreader, you could say, "Is there anybody that you might know who specifically focuses in proofreading that might be useful for me to talk to and ask some questions for advice and everything?" And sometimes they'll have somebody and sometimes they won't. But a lot of times it will get you to another person you can talk to. And write a thank you email afterwards. A lot of traditional career advice books say write a handwritten letter. Um, that's super nice, but a lot of times, if they work in a big company, it takes months for that letter to get to the person. So for example, somebody wrote me a very sweet thank you note. This employer that I worked with, who I helped them find interns, and I did not get the letter until literally a full calendar year after she had sent it. So just know that sometimes snail mail really takes too long. So send an email afterwards just to hedge your bets. um, so that's informational interview. I believe. Okay, so here is an example of an informational interview request. You'll get the slides, so you have this kind of template. But you say, hello, so and so. My name is so and so. I'm reaching out to you because I'm interested in particular field of work you're interested in. And I notice you are their specific job title at specific company. I'd love to hear your perspective on your work as someone in the industry, as someone who is I would I write it better than this. I'd love to hear your perspective on your work as someone in the industry, as someone who is also interested in whatever the line of work is. Would you have 15 minutes in coming weeks for a brief call? Thank you for your time and attention. So that middle phrase, do better than I did. But that kind of gives you the idea of how to approach someone. And I've found this kind of template works pretty well. Most people are willing to talk to you. As long as they know why you're reaching out, people are generally willing to help. Um, so just a brief activity, developing your informational interview plan. So take out a piece of paper and say, list 3 jobs that you're interested in. And think of a couple questions that you'd ask someone who's doing that job right now about their work. Just in the interest of time, maybe just one job and one question. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. And then we'll move into the next steps and Q&A. Wi-Fi back on. All right, just in the interest of time, I'm gonna move on, but feel free to put those in the chat and I'll respond to them as they come up. But this is a way to sort of prepare yourself. I created a whole list of different questions that you can think to ask people when you do these informational interviews. But that's a great way to sort of get information about whether this is something that interests you, or maybe it's a position that now that I've learned more information, I'm not that interested. So job searching is a journey. Know that while the process isn't easy, there are people and resources out there to help you. And some of those resources. So I will provide worksheets. I'm going to put the JOT form in the chat right now. So if you fill this out, I will email you. Oh, whoops. So this JOT form, you'll fill this out and I'll email you the resources that I had mentioned throughout the session today. You can also watch the recording of our previous workshop on career exploration. I put the link here, so I'll send this out in the slides too. There are tons of great resume and cover letter templates for free on Canva. I will go over that in much more detail in the next workshop. For the Pomodoro method, there are a lot of free apps that you can find on either the Android or the Apple App Store that has the little Pomodoro timer. Also, just a regular timer works fine. The Professional Associations Database, which I briefly mentioned, this is a really cool tool where if you want to find professional organizations for different places, so for example, dental assistant or dental hygienist. So let's say you wanted to learn about dental hygiene. There's the different organizations that they have, and joining these a lot of times for people who are fresh out of school or are looking for a job, they offer them at discounted rates. So this is a great place to find people to network with. And of course, check out your local library for career resources. There are many, and they can help you with navigating things too. Some references, and that's it. Thank you so much. I think we do have some time for questions. And I want to make sure that we don't get cut off like last time because I was talking too long. So thank you for your time and attention, and I am all ears for questions.